with the technology to genetically engineer humankind? A few years ago, most of us would have laughed at these ideas. When we come back, we'll look at some photographic evidence that raises more serious questions about what the mysterious Anunnaki may have left behind.
In our ancient past, there were advanced beings referred to as the Anunnaki, translated, those who from heaven to earth came.
The idea that there was in our solar system a race of intelligent beings far older than us who are now gone would certainly force us to rethink lots of questions, including the question of human origins. Where did we come from? Could we be the products of genetic engineering?
The hypothesis that modern science is only now catching up with ancient knowledge is inspiring scientists and researchers to increase efforts to rediscover that which may have been lost over time. Thanks to the science of archaeology, experts now know that the first great civilization emerged almost 6,000 years ago. The people of this society were called Sumerians, after their land, Sumer, in the great plain between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, today's Iraq. The book of Genesis calls the land Shinar. For generations, biblical scholars either ignore biblical references to ancient kingdoms or categorize these as legend or lore. Through the study of historical relics and the translation of ancient languages, many biblical researchers now believe that the previously questioned Old Testament references are indeed historically authentic accounts of flourishing, advanced cultures.
If you study the Genesis document, that God made Adam out of clay and then took Eve out of his rib, one of his ribs, etc. If you study this document, you discover that it's really a much shorter version of a much more complicated document that comes out of Babylonia and then out of Sumer and so on. Now, these ancient texts give a really complicated story of powerful, non-human, godlike beings actually engineering us, making us for specific purposes.
In ancient Mesopotamia, the secrets of astronomy and other celestial knowledge are kept carefully guarded, studied behind closed doors by an exclusive society of priest astronomers. Cylinder seals like these are the only surviving record of these carefully guarded secrets. This clay tablet carries the print of a cylinder seal about 4,500 years old. It depicts the god Enlil granting the plow to humankind, ushering in the age of modern agriculture. On closer inspection, something completely remarkable can be seen. A detailed depiction of the complete solar system configured identically to that known to contemporary science. With the sun prominently figured in the center, each planet appears in its correct position and relative proportions to the other planetary bodies. On the outskirts is one additional planet, a 10th, not currently located by astronomers of our modern era. Astronomers around the world are on the lookout for this evasive celestial sphere, as a growing body of physical evidence indicates that it does in fact exist. The surviving historical records of the Sumerians reveal the story of an intruder planet, Nibiru, which appeared out of deep space, drawn into the center of our solar system by the planetary pull of Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter. On an opposing orbital path with the seventh planet, a planet referred to in Sumerian records as Tiamat, Nibiru's new orbit around the Sun placed the two planets on a collision course. As they draw near, one of the satellites of Nibiru crashes into Tiamat, cracking the planet. Subsequent collisions smash half of Tiamat completely, breaking the pieces into what develops mostly into the asteroid belt. The other half of Tiamat becomes Earth. The Earth is thrust into a new orbital position, carrying with it Tiamat's main satellite, our moon. Nibiru, the intruder, is cast into a permanent clockwise solar orbit, returning to Earth's neighborhood once each 3,600 years.
This tale of creation echoed through all the ancient cultures, becoming part of the scientific knowledge that we find in the Old Testament, in the creation story of Genesis.
If we apply the knowledge of the Mesopotamian text to the biblical text, the correct reading of the book of Genesis emerges.
The question remains, how would we as a culture respond to incontrovertible evidence of a species of beings that not only preceded our own but actually engineered mankind?
Of all the elusive mysteries, the greatest is the riddle of life itself. How did it begin? From what corner of the universe did the first emanations of existence arise? Was the seed of life carried to Earth from the planet Nibiru? Directed panspermia, another scientific theory, suggests that life on Earth is seeded by a race of beings from outside the planet, not by chance, but as the deliberate activity of an otherworldly society. The Sumerians point to the Anunnaki as the creators of mankind, our own benefactors of life. The Anunnaki themselves arrive and create humankind. How was Adam created? According to the Sumerians, it was by genetic engineering, fertilization in vitro. But why? Sumerian documentation suggests the Anunnaki create humanity to assist in mining African gold.
Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the three great Western traditions, religious traditions, are all founded on the idea that there's something special about human beings. We didn't arrive here accidentally, so we're not just some consequence of billions of years of pointless accidental permutations of life forms. No, we were created in the image of God. Now, what if it were the case that there were creatures both technologically more advanced than us, older than us in terms of their civilization, and maybe even more intelligent than us, and more spiritually advanced, if we could imagine that? Then would this cause the creation story to collapse and leaving, literally billions of people on the planet totally confused about the meaning of life?
Two figures stand on either side of a craft. Some researchers believe that Mars was habitable as little as 10,000 years ago.
The ancient Sumerian text, just in a very broad overview, basically tell us that these Anunnaki came from space and landed on the earth in the Tigris-Euphrates Valley. They began to set up a colony that they called Eden.
According to Genesis, Eden, or Eden, is where Adam was created from dust and Eve from one of his ribs. Others, however, have a more high-tech version of how human life began.
In time, needing manpower, needing workers, jumped the gun on evolution using genetic engineering.
They took the sperm of one of the Anunnaki, mixed that with the ovum of a primitive humanoid, probably one of these primitives that we are now finding archaeological remains of in Africa, and they produced a hybrid which eventually became Cro-Magnon or modern man.
We're dealing with an issue that I think has potential for being highly controversial, because after all, if you say that Jehovah is an ET, then that changes the basis of Judaism and Christianity in a very fundamental way.
Legend has it that when the Anunnaki came back after several thousand years to see how their genetic handiwork had turned out, they found the Earth females irresistibly attractive.
What fascinates me on this planet is the diverse, many different races we have here. Is it because of environment and locale, or are these all, I've always thought about this, are these all various sex races from other extraterrestrials that have been here, and, they've manipulated in their own image? So the Asian person, the Caucasian, the African, they are in the image of the extraterrestrial that came to this planet a long time ago. Have you ever thought of that? We talk about just how we evolved on this planet. We're talking about the work of Zecharia Sitchin and his theories of the 12th planet. Robert Safier does a very thorough job trying to coordinate all the various people who are talking about this. And it's growing, I think. It's growing, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
A 10th planet? A mysterious species with the technology to genetically engineer humankind? A few years ago, most of us would have laughed at these ideas. When we come back, we'll look at some photographic evidence that raises more serious questions about what the mysterious Anunnaki may have left behind.
In our ancient past, there were advanced beings referred to as the Anunnaki, translated, those who from heaven to earth came.
The idea that there was in our solar system a race of intelligent beings far older than us who are now gone would certainly force us to rethink lots of questions, including the question of human origins. Where did we come from? Could we be the products of genetic engineering?
The hypothesis that modern science is only now catching up with ancient knowledge is inspiring scientists and researchers to increase efforts to rediscover that which may have been lost over time. Thanks to the science of archaeology, experts now know that the first great civilization emerged almost 6,000 years ago. The people of this society were called Sumerians, after their land, Sumer, in the Great Plain between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, today's Iraq. The book of Genesis calls the land Shinar. For generations, biblical scholars either ignore biblical